The words I was dreading was, I'm going to leave you and we're leaving. And she said, I'm taking the kids with me. The next few years was a very dark moment in my life. I was questioning everything. I was questioning, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I putting up with so much of my life? And there was a moment in my life where I thought, well, what's the point of being here? What is the point? It is, I'm in pain. I can see my kids are in pain. My kids were 2 and 5 years old at that time, and they really was struggling too. And I just kept on asking myself, what's the point? And there's a saying that was always resonated with me. It says, the universe has shaken you to awaken you. The universe has shaken you to awaken you. And my God, did it awake me? Did it shake me so much? What I'd like you to do just for 30 seconds, right? Just 30 seconds, we're going to do a quick exercise. And this exercise is incredibly powerful. It gets you into your body and it helps you really tap into the raw masculine part of you. So I'm just going to demonstrate it quickly. So we're just going to take a deep breath in. If anyone's been to Tony Robbins, you will know the priming exercise. Give me a nod if you do. If you don't worry. So all you do is take a deep breath in and extend your arms. And then you blow out from your nose. Yeah. And what we're going to do, we're going to do 30 of these rapidly. So we're going to go up and down. So every time we go up, we go in, then out, then in, then out. Right. So we're going to do this 30 times. Right. Are we ready? 3, 2, 1. When you've done 30, let that breath oxygenate you. Just ground yourself. Slow and measured breath. Hope you guys are feeling more comfortable. I'm going to share something with you. 10 years ago, August in 2013, my world completely changed. It plummeted into pure darkness. And there I was, you know, unconscious of the world. And my wife came up to me and she said, the words I was dreading was, I'm going to leave you and we're leaving. And she said, I'm taking the kids with me. And that was the day, I would say, the most painful day of my life. Even though I've lost both of my parents, but this day, there was something about this. It was incredibly painful. It sent me to rock bottom. The next few years was a very dark moment in my life. I was questioning everything. I was questioning, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I putting up with so much of my life? And there was a moment in my life where I thought, well, what's the point of being here? What is the point? It is, I'm in pain. I can see my kids are in pain. My kids were 2 and 5 years old at that time, and they really was struggling too. And I just kept on asking myself, what's the point? I ended up, they ended up moving far away. I ended up, you know, seeing them every other weekend. And every time I saw them, I felt this gush of pain, anxiety, shame, guilt. And, like I didn't have a great coping mechanism. So I, turned to alcohol. I would drop my kids off. It would take me 10 hours to pick them up on a Friday. It'd take me 10 hours to drop them, roundabout journey. And on the way back, I would just sneakily go into the shop, buy some alcohol, sneak them on the train, and I would just sit there. I would sit there just contemplating life. But luckily, was a moment in my life, and I thought, and there was a deeper calling. I couldn't figure out what it was, but it just kept me away from taking my own life. But there's just something there, just kept pulling me. And there's a saying that was always resonated with me. It says, "The universe has shaken you to awaken you." The universe has shaken you to awaken you. And my God, did it awake me? Did it shake me so much? And I went on a quest to learn as much as I could. I want to know, why the fuck did I fuck up here? What did I do wrong? Why doesn't she want me? Why don't I want my kids here with me? So over 10 years, I've been learning and learning and learning. I've just been learning and trying to figure out why. And what I've done is, as Dr. Glover said, I've taken everything I've learned and put them into really simple ways to understand this. My background is computer science. So therefore, my background is very much about simplifying things, making it effective. Also, it's a gift, but also, when you're a computer nerd and tech, it doesn't work really well with women and the feminine. So what I'm about to share with you is what I call the five fractures, and it's simplified personal development into one. So these five fractures help you be more effective and greater attraction, love, sex, and success itself. So this presentation is for you if you identify with the nice guy syndrome. And this is something I recognized when I read the book, and I thought, fuck, who is this guy? He knows every single thing about me. He's been following me around. So a lot of shame and guilt came up. Also, this presentation is for you if you frequently feel anxious and lose your grounding. Women don't crave you like they do for chocolate. You become too clingy, avoidant, and you harbor a lot of shame and guilt, and also resentment as well. Your masculinity is weak and your aura is dim. The benefits of this presentation is to get clarity on your masculine growth without the noise. There's a lot of personal development. There's so many YouTubes and books that you can read, but it's full of noise. And nice guys love a lot of noise, but they get everything so complex. And they say, simplification is the ultimate sophistication. It'll also elevate your inner confidence and charisma, improve your IQ, EQ with health for healthier relationships. A lot of women say, I want a man who's empathetic, understanding. That's one of the relationship problems my ex-wife used to say. You have no empathy. You don't understand me. You don't understand emotions. And I said, what does that mean? You also get success in your personal and professional life, and you have a fulfilling sexual and spiritual well-being. So the five masculine fractures is the first one is a nerve fracture. Then you've got the second one, which is the mindset. Third one is emotional. Fourth one is a sexual fracture. And the fifth fracture is a spiritual fracture. Now, these fractures are underpinned by toxic shame and guilt, and they're very guilt-based. If you've read the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, I highly recommend you read that book many times, but also study that book. Dr. Glover talks a lot about toxic shame in there, and that was my introduction to toxic shame. So toxic shame and guilt. Shame is a belief in being inherently flawed or wrong, impacting one's identity. And we start to create a lot of negative identities, I never do this, or I'm not that kind of person. When you ever see yourself doing that, your ego's talking, and there's a lot of shame and guilt around there. And guilt is about a feeling about specific actions. I feel guilty, I've done something wrong. And I've been going through my own journey, healing a lot of shame and guilt. And when you start working on this, amazing miracle things happen. So let's have a look at the first fracture. This is the one that really sits at the bottom and the core of the framework. A nerve fracture, a man with a nerve fracture struggles with a volatile nervous system, leading to chaos, anxiety, and disorder. And the shame voice that they hear, its internal voice is, I'm not in control. I don't feel safe. I don't feel grounded. I don't have any say in in this matter. So there's a lot of internal voices that will go on. One of them is, I'm not in control. So it's always a really powerful way to dig deep and find out what your shame fear voice is. So let's have a look at Symptoms of the nerve fracture. Here's a few. I mean, there's quite a lot, but I'm just giving you an overview of some of the fracture. If you find yourself being impulsive, impatient, hurry up, do this, or restless, then you're suffering with a nerve fracture. Sometimes I pace up and down all the time. I'm looking around. I'm fidgety. I'm not cool, calm, and grounded. So I didn't realize I had a nerve fracture until I'd done some personal development. Also, you get overwhelmed, you overly worried, or you're overreactive. This is a sign that you've got a nerve fracture. Men with a nerve fracture also avoid conflict and they have the dare response. If you've gone through the book, the dare response is you start to defend yourself, you start to make excuses, you start to explain things, and the R is to rationalize, or I sometimes call it is to be retaliate. And that's when your nerve fracture is kicking in. Someone asks you, how did you do that? Oh, well. And they start to explain themselves or they start to make a lot of excuses. I see a lot of my kids, my boys, they go into the dare response. My younger ones, he's becoming a lot more cooler and calmer. So he takes his time and then he presents his, argument or conversation. Also, men with a nerve fracture are panic under pressure or when losing control. Maybe you're on a date. Maybe a woman gives you a shit test, and then you start to panic and you start, what do I say? How do I deal with this? Maybe you start getting very reactive in that moment. Or maybe you feel like you're not having any more control of the situation. Lately I've seen a lot of myself feeling like I'm losing a lot of control around when it comes to parenting. Also, you go through a lot of soothing cycles. How addicted are we when it comes to our social media? We're looking at our phone constantly all the time. So if you have a nerve fracture, you find yourself on social media. And social media, phones are designed to exploit your nerve fracture. Let me repeat that again. Phones are designed to exploit your nerve fracture. There's a book on this called Hooked. Interesting psychology, how they use it to get people hooked onto social media. Also, if you're nervous, you might go towards food. I go towards food a lot. You might go towards porn, masturbation. There could be many coping mechanisms. So how can we repair this? The one thing I always tell the guys I work with is get some sleep. Discipline is the most important part here. Sleep discipline, and then you can add some breath. And then also slowing down, slow down your gestures, slow down your breathing. And then you become more calmer and you make wiser decisions instead of foolish ones. So that's a nerve fracture. Let's have a look at the second one, the mindset, the mental attitude here. A mindset fractured man harbors beliefs of inadequacy, inferiority, and being a disappointment just as is. So there's a lot of inferiority complex showing up here. And the shame fear voice is, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm unworthy. There's a lot of shame voices that you'll hear if you take your time, dig deep, and you'll discover. So the mindset fracture, what are the symptoms of this one? Fears of rejection and hides their flaws because they want to see themselves as a perfectionist. Because they don't feel worthy, they don't feel good enough, they will just do anything they can just to make sure everything's perfect. Because if everything's perfect, there's no criticism, there's no judgment. Also, men with a fractured mindset they're really hard on themselves. There's ruminating negative voices in their heads. They're always complaining, criticizing, condemning. They're constantly comparing themselves and they never feel good about themselves. They always feel inferior. They look at everybody else. Look, this person's got a better body than me. This person's making more money than this guy's got a hotter girl from me. They're constantly in this ruminating pattern. They're constantly seeking validation. And when it's time for some feedback, they reject that because their fracture causes so much pain that their nerve fracture kicks in. So they'll start to reject everything. Next one is guys with the mindset fracture are defeatist attitude. I can't, it gives up easily. They have a can't do attitude. And most of our brain is kind of like negatively formed. It's like negatively biased. So our default setting is negative. My default setting was always go towards the negative, always looking at problems rather than being solution focused. Guys with a mindset fracture lack inner confidence and inner courage. Most of the time, they spend trying to prove themselves. And more of the time, the cowardice comes in rather than the courageous man. So, how can we kill this? How can we improve this? One of the things is we can change our language. Instead of saying, I can't, say, how can I? So instead of being negative language, just change your language pattern. It's such a most powerful thing you can do is to start becoming more either neutral or positive focused. Also, kill the inner bitch. Kill that person that complains, moans, criticizes about everybody else. Start to see things in a much more stronger way. So you'll be more confident, decisive, and a capable man. The next fracture is the emotional fracture. And an emotionally fractured man suffers with chronic feelings of being unlovable, undesired, and unwanted. And the shame fear voice is, I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not good enough to be loved. So it's all about emotions and relationships, the emotional fracture impacts. So let's have a look at some of the symptoms of the emotional fracture. Fear of abandonment. You know, they just cannot approach and talk to someone, or if they're in a long-term relationship, they make a move and they fear the abandonment that happens. They get clingy, and also when they're single, they might go on a date and they'll start future pacing. Oh my gosh, she's the one. I found the one. And they see themselves, okay, right by the end of the date, they're already planning the next date. He's already planning the next date. He's even thinking about taking her on a holiday, maybe even introducing her to a family. Oh, this could be the one. I could have kids with her. So emotionally fractured people really struggle to see what they are. And they idolize women, right? They put them on a pedestal and they think, oh, this is the most important thing in my life. And because he idolizes women, he seeks their approval. He's always monitoring their approval. His nervous system is always watching, is she happy? Is she sad? You know, happy wife, happy life is what the emotional fracture guy believes. Here's a term I created, the sport behavior reflex. Now, the SBR is when in a relationship, when we get affected by a relationship or we get affected by a partner, we tend to get hypersensitive. We start to sulk. You know, we become passive aggressive. We become demanding. I'm not getting my needs out. We start to have tantrums and sulk and get, you know, I'm not happy, and it's all about me, 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 me. This is what emotionally fractured guys do, and this is one of the most unattractive things a man can do, is to have a spoilt behavior reflex. Also, they play the victim role. Poor me, seek sympathy. I was telling the guys in the call this week. I had a girlfriend, and she when I in my early part of my journey, I was there and I was like, oh, poor me, I've gone through divorce and my kids have gone there. And I was telling her this sob story. And we were walking along the river on the path, and she said to me, oh, poor you. I just looked at her and went, what? She said, no, poor Faisal, poor, your little heart's hurting. And I thought, wow, you're horrible. And she said, I've heard this so many times from you, this story. And she goes, there comes a point where now I don't feel any more connection with you. It's making me icky. It's making me sick hearing the same conversations about you. So that was a real awakening. She said, look, I don't want to hear it anymore. Yeah, poor you, I get it. But what are you going to do about it? And this is what the mindset fracture is about. You know, it's very pessimistic, whereas, guys who've unfractured themselves, started healing themselves, are very positive thinking. Guys with the emotional fracture are more feminine, and they are more, they're more feminine, they're more emotive, they really go on their emotions rather than being masculine and lead. I'm not saying you have to be one or the other, but it's important to have a really good balance. When I found out I was more feminine, a lot of shame came up for me, and I thought, what? All my behaviors were like women. I'm needy, I'm clingy, I want this, I seek women all the time. I was like, what's wrong with me? So how do we repair this? You prioritize yourself. You start to individualize. You go through initiation. This is what Integration Nation is about, is to help you start to initiate, become your own man rather than stop being the boy anymore. Rule one of my 12 rules is be willing to walk away. If you can't walk away, you're attached. Dr. Glover always talks about this attachment's the root of all anxiety and suffering. Also, have some standards. A lot of nice guys do anything to get into a relationship. I did this, I'm guilty of everything I'm teaching you here and had no standards. Anything or anyone will do, but anyone who gives me, any woman that gives me attention, I'll just get into a relationship. That's how I got into my first relationship was a 6 year toxic relationship where she was controlling, abusive. She had many fractures as well. So once you start to work on this, you become more attractive, more stable. You're not a pushover anymore. You're a more confident, attractive man. Guys with an emotional fracture put women on a pedestal. And when they do that, they make her his emotional center. And this is what you have to really work on. And this is one of the guys I would say is one of the most damaging fractures that they have in the relationship. Sexual fracture is a sexual fracture is a man who, a sexually fractured man lives with secrecy, shame, dysfunction, experiencing unmet needs that lead to addictions, performance issues, and infidelity. The shame voice is, I'm undesirable. Nobody wants me. Women don't want me. I'm not the kind of guy women are attracted to. I'm not the kind of guy, my wife, she wants to spend time with. She gets sexually aroused with, excited to be with. So let's look at some of the symptoms. Not getting enough sex or unsatisfying sex. So guys with a sexual fracture, they settle with really poor standards when it comes to sex. Also, they have a lot of insecurities. They might be worried about their body. They might be worried about their penis. I've been working with guys for a while, and it's very rare to hear about how much insecurities guys do have when it comes to their bodies. As most fractured guys or the nice guys are quite feminine based, they will feel a lot of insecurities around themselves. When you start to do the work, your insecurity starts to soften and they start to get to not be a massive problem when it comes to your sexual life as well. They suffer with erectile dysfunction and also premature ejaculation. Fractured men, when it comes to sexual aspect of it, they have a lot of compulsions. They compulsively masturbate. I know porn is a huge, huge problem with guys, especially when it's so easy available now. They have guys with sexual fracture have affairs, peep shows. Now OnlyFans is sponsored by guys with a lot of sexual fracture. They could go towards prostitution. There's a lot of voyeurism. They have this real addiction and need for this. Also, sexual fracture can be made worse by social and religious guilt and shame. I came from a culture where it was like Fight Club. You don't talk about sex. You don't mention anything about sex. To like when I remember I was young and 16 years old, 16, 17 years old, to be seen talking to a girl, I had this incredible amount of shame. It's like, why are you talking to a girl? It's like, what's your agenda here? And obviously there was a lot of secrecy, shame. Of course I want, of course I want desired her, I wanted her, but I hid a lot of that. And when you hide that, the thing with toxic shame is the more you hide it, the more it'll blow up, explode at one point. So putting light on toxic shame, speaking about toxic shame is how you heal this. Also, guys with the sexual fracture use sex and compulsions to fill the void, fill the emptiness inside this. So how do we get over this? So sexual detox. I remember Dr. Glover doing a sexual detox in his PET program. For 2 weeks, no porn, no ejaculating, no looking, spending time on the feminine, on even on social media. It's not looking anything on that. So it's a great way to start focusing on yourself and your sexual energy, and you can start transmuting that energy. If you've read the book Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, it's all about transmuting your energy into something more productive. And then doing a lot of shadow work. Shadow work is a lot of toxic shame work. Shame work, like here in the tribe calls, when we were in the tribe calls, brotherhood calls, we're able to share things that we don't want anybody else to know. And then you become more sexually confident, dominant, relaxed, and highly attractive. You become the kind of guy that women sexually want. She won't put you in the friend zone. She won't see you as the, oh, he's just a provider guy, but I want to be, fucked by this kind of guy. Let's talk the next aspect that really impacts guys is the spiritual fracture disconnects you from your depth, your intuition, and your higher power, rendering life, relationships, and your aura dull. And the fear voice is, I'm not fulfilled. I feel empty inside. What's wrong with me? There's a huge sense of emptiness. And I remember before going on this path as a life coach, it was even I was working and doing everything right, it just felt empty inside. Even when I was working as a life coach, there was some parts of me that was empty. And I'm thinking, well, I've heard so many stories of helping everybody else, but I just felt empty inside. So when you start to do the whole work and put your needs first, then you start to feel more you, and then you can start to access higher parts of you. Spiritual fractured guys lack aim, direction, or any purpose. They're like, I don't know. They just sit around going, wherever takes me. They go, I'll go with the flow. They also lack a deeper soul level connection. If you've been on dating apps, women say, I love deep conversations. And I remember my coach, and he said, I want depth. Speak, because a lot of guys will speak from their logic and they don't speak from their soul. When they speak from their soul, it's magnetizing to women, it's magnetizing to the world. You look at some of the spiritual people, they magnetize people, and that because of that, their aura is so magnetic. When you don't have this fracture worked on, it's dull, your aura is dull, your energy is dull, you lack that magnetism. And as Albert Einstein said, he said, everything is energy. Also, guys with the spiritual fracture are joyless, ungrateful, and they lack passion. They lack zest of life. If you go on dating apps and you read the profiles, you'll see this word so common, zest. I want a man with a zest. He's got a zest for life. So when you're on a date and you don't have that passion, that energy that excites you, because remember, misery loves company, but also like nervousness, but when you have good energy, positive energy, that is also contagious. So energy can be highly contagious. When I've hung around with strong men, what I've noticed is that I'll just stick my camera. Yeah, when I was hung around strong men, I noticed that my testosterone level goes up as well. So how can we fix this? Stillness, meditation, spirituality requires a lot more going deeper within yourself, and psychedelics can be an incredible help. So the benefits are you're more fulfilled, more relaxed, more peaceful, and have inner peace. So guys, this is the five fractures. And is there overweight that I'm not in control, I'm not enough, I'm unlovable, I'm not desirable, and I'm not fulfilled. I know we have a lot of these fractures, but just remember, the wound is the place where the light enters you. Just because we have these flaws, it's very easy to forget our good side. If as an integrated man is becoming light and dark. So just because these are our wounds, turn them into wisdom, turn them into your power, like so many men have. So, gentlemen, it's time for the breakout room. And in the breakout room, you've got 12 minutes and ask yourself the question, out of the five fractures, which one do you relate to the most? And give an example of how these fractures manifest in your life. Gentlemen, with that, I'm Faisal Khokhar and I'm in.